All right, so the first thing that it's asking us to do in this lesson is to identify the zeros, the linear factor, and the vertex of each of these three quadratic functions. Okay, so we did zeros and linear factors on the last one. So vertex is the only new thing. And we talked about what a vertex was. It's that point on the parabola where it changes from decreasing to increasing, or increasing to decreasing if it was a downward facing parabola. Okay, so it's that kind of turnaround point of the quadratic function. Okay, so we're just identifying the zeros and linear factors like the last one, and then we're identifying the location, the coordinates of the vertex. Now, so that you can see the repetitive nature, I'm going to do all the zeros first, then I'm going to do all the linear factors, and then I'm going to list the location of each vertex. Now, as I start to look at these, I notice b of x has a zero of positive 1 and negative 3. K of x has a zero of positive 1 and negative 3. And r of x also has a zero of positive 1 and negative 3. So all three of them have the exact same zeros. Okay, so now I'm going to be looking for the linear factors. Well, I'm using my zeros to get my linear factors. So I get the same two linear factors each time since they have the same two zeros. A zero of 1 is going to give me a linear factor of x minus 1, because if x was 1, that would be 0. And the 0 of negative 3 gives me a factor of x plus 3, because if x was negative 3, that would be 0. So, and they all have the same zeros, so they all have the same factors. Okay. Now, for each vertex, I'm going to go through and locate the point that the parabola shifts from either decreasing to increasing or increasing to decreasing. In all three of these cases, since they're upward facing, all of their vertices are minimum points, so they're going from decreasing to increasing. So when I'm looking at b of x, I can see the vertex is at negative 1, negative 4. At k of x at negative 1, negative 8. And at r of x, negative 1, negative 2. All right, so you should have noticed the things that were similar and different on these graphs. Obviously, their zeros and linear factors were all the same, but their vertices were all different. Although they did have the same x coordinate, just a different y coordinate. Okay, so on this part, this is probably going to be one of the most confusing parts. It's saying that we're using this form, y equals a, and then the two linear factors, and we're going to use the vertex and the two factors to find our a value. Okay, that means we're going to have to plug everything in except our a value. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So this is what it would look like when I just plugged in the linear factors. Okay, and this is for b of x. Okay, y equals a times x plus 1 times x minus 3. Now, I also have to plug in the vertex. Well, the vertex gives me an x value and a y value. Okay, so I'm going to plug those in for the x value. I'm going to plug the x in for both of those, and I'm going to plug the y value in for the y value. Oh, almost had a mistake because I had the wrong linear factors, and that would have messed everything up. Okay, I need x minus 1 since the 0 is positive 1. And I need x plus 3 since the 0 is negative 3. So now I'm going to plug in the vertex to the correct formula, the correct equation. So that gives me negative 4 equals a times negative 1 minus 1 times negative 1 plus 3. See, all I did, the vertex was negative 1, negative 4. So I put the negative 1 where the x's were, and I put the negative 4 where the y was. So now the only thing I have missing is my a value. So I can solve for it. So that gives me negative 4 equals a times negative 2 times positive 2, which is negative 4 equals a times negative 4. And then when I move the negative 4 over, I get that a equals 1. Okay, so for b of x, the a did equal 1. Okay, let's see what the a equals on the other two. You should be able to do that before I do it. So here's the work for k of x. You just plugged in the negative 1 and the negative 8, just like we did the negative 1 and the negative 4, and then we solved for a. Okay, so then you should be able to do r of x by yourself. So I'm not doing that one for you. And you should be able to answer number 5, about the a value. You need to make sure you look at each a value and compare them to the graph to see if you can find a pattern. So to help you answer number 5, number 6, and number 7. Well, number 5 is just writing the equation. Okay. I'll write k of x for you so you can at least see one example of that. And then you're going to have to answer 6 and 7 on your own. All right, so here's what k of x would look like. We already knew the linear factors, so those don't change because that's where the zeros come from. But the a value we found was 2, so I just put the 2 in front. Okay, so that would be the equation for k of x because it had zeros of positive 1 and negative 3 and an a value of 2. Okay, so at this point, you should be able to come up with a good answer for 6 and at least come up with a guess for 7 and test it out and see if your theory works.